Spencer Sutton here with Evernest, and I'm going to talk to you today about should you sell or should you rent your house? This is a question that gets asked all of the time. We have owners that call us. They're looking for maybe a rental estimate of how much their property should rent. Owners call us all the time thinking that they may want to rent it instead of sell it. And what is making this so attractive right now really are the low interest rates that people have. Like, people typically don't want to sell their home that has a 2.5%, 3% interest rate and buy something at a 7.5% interest rate, which is today the going rate. And what makes this a little bit more difficult is if you're in a really great area that's experienced tremendous amount of appreciation over the past several years, especially over the past 2 or 3 years, and there's really a lot that you can gain from selling your house, but yet you don't want to give up that low interest rate. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk to you about the pros and cons of both renting and selling so that maybe you can make the best decision just based on your situation. All right, so let's talk about the pros of renting your property. Well, there's no secret today, it's a hot rental market out there. There's not a lot of inventory and people are renting their houses very quickly. It's very easy to rent a house as long as it's priced right and as long as it's a good house. This is something to think about because you're probably not going to have a difficult time finding a fantastic resident and renting your house for a long period of time. And again, the market may play a little bit factor in that, but most of the markets we're seeing, there's still a very strong demand for rental. The next pro to renting your property is really you're still going to get appreciation on your property. It's really amazing. Even with high interest rates, we thought that prices of houses would come down, but it's not happening, and mainly because there's just not a lot of inventory out there, and so prices are staying steady, even increasing a little bit, and so you're going to still get appreciation. We don't think that there's going to be a big turn in the market. The GDP strong, again, housing is sought after. There's not a lot of inventory, and so prices are remaining steady. You're going to receive more appreciation as time goes by. And obviously another benefit, we've already discussed this, is just the low interest rates you have. You're borrowing that money at such a low interest rate, it's difficult to give up, and so your mortgage, your low payment is locked in, and what's happened to rents is rents increased over the past several years, and so more than likely you're going to have a nice spread just from a mortgage to rent standpoint. There are other factors you need to think about, but I'll talk to you about that in a little bit. There's several ways you can reduce taxable income by being a landlord, such as deducting property taxes and mortgage interest. The tax incentives can significantly boost the return of your rental property. I would just ask that you consult a CPA for specific tax advantages. All right, so let's look at the flip side of this. If you're deciding to keep this property and you've never been a landlord before, I want to go ahead and tell you what's involved. We have managed tens of thousands of houses all over the country, and so I'm going to give you a little bit of insight as what you can expect. The first thing is, it really is a commitment. Your mindset really has to shift from homeowner to business owner, and it's a long-term commitment. You're taking care of this house, so you've got maintenance and repair issues you're going to have to deal with. You now have a resident living in this house, so if they need to communicate with you, you're going to have to pay attention to what they're saying, answer their emails, pick up the phone. And I believe what most people overlook is that when a resident is living in your house, they expect certain things to be done for them, and this means any kind of issue with the house, they want that fixed as soon as possible. And so you may have overlooked it in the past, it's not that big of a deal, but they're going to want this taken care of ASAP. The second challenge or drawback with renting your property is just really the biggest probably danger is screening for the right resident. Like, this is huge because that resident is your asset. And I have done this myself back in 2000 and probably 5 or 6. I started renting houses, started buying and renting houses, and I was screening them all myself. And it was not a good situation. I messed up more than I got it right in those early years. And so you just want to make sure that you understand how to screen residents, because this is the biggest part. Like, this is the biggest risk for a homeowner becoming a landlord. And then the next thing I've already mentioned a little bit is just the ongoing maintenance and repairs. I would think about how old your house is. If your house is fairly new, maybe it was built in 2010 or later, then you're not going to have a lot of maintenance and repairs. But if you have an older home, just consider that. There's going to be things that have to be taken care of. And again, a resident's going to expect that from you. Then I would would also think about your roof, your HVAC, your water heater. How old are those big ticket items? And go ahead and start planning for when those may need to be replaced. And then the very last thing that just ties into finding a resident is just making sure that you're following landlord-tenant law. This is very, very big. You cannot discriminate for any reason, and you want to make sure that you're following the law. And certain cities, certain areas have different rental regulations that you may have to abide. So you may want to check your local laws. And also, if you have an HOA, what are they saying about it? What are their stipulations for having a resident living in that house? And so now we go to the benefits of selling your property. Well, obviously the biggest one is immediate liquidity, right? You get all that cash and you can take it and buy another house. Again, you're going to pay more to borrow that money. However, if you've seen significant appreciation, then that may offset some of the pain of taking out a mortgage that's over 7%. Second benefit of selling is just really you don't have any responsibilities with the house anymore. Once it's gone, once it's sold, it's over, you're done with it. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to worry about repairs and maintenance. You don't have to worry about finding a resident. So there definitely are just like a release of responsibilities, whereas if you decide to rent it, you're going to need to take responsibility. And again, like I said, it's more of a commitment. The mindset shift from a homeowner to a business person, you really have to make that. Another pro to selling your property is, again, I've mentioned a little bit about getting a lot of appreciation in certain areas and certain markets. So you can capitalize on that even if you've owned your home maybe for 3 or 4 years. What if you bought it right before COVID, 2019? You've probably seen significant increase in the value of that property, and you're going to take advantage of that. And then lastly is just the flexibility with what you do from that point on. If you sell your property, you have this liquidity. You can really do whatever you want to. If you're upgrading, you're downsizing, you're wanting to build something, you can do whatever you want to. And so it does give you more flexibility than being tied in to a property with a resident. So what are the drawbacks of selling? Well, you give up that incredible interest rate that you currently have. I mean, that is probably the biggest pain, and that's why we're seeing a lot of properties on the market. The reason we don't have houses flooding the market is because everybody is locked in so low, they don't ever want to give that up. And that would really be the downside, is giving that up. If you sell it, you're saying goodbye to that forever. However, if you're paying cash for something, it doesn't matter. For most people, they're not paying cash. For most people, they do still have a mortgage. They do still owe something. They still owe money on their property, and they really don't want to give that low interest rate up. The next disadvantage really is that when you sell that property and you're not renting it, you really lose a very valuable asset. Aside from the low interest rate, having a resident that pays you month after month for living in that property, you're going to gain, more than likely, you're going to have some cash flow. You're going to continue to enjoy appreciation on that property, and you're going to give that asset up. Part of your retirement plan is to own that house. I've known several people, homeowners, who have decided to rent instead of sell, and then what they did was they ended up having a resident in there, and eventually a child or a grandchild eventually moved into the house, maybe bought it from them at some point down the road. So there's all kinds of things that you lose, a lot of options you lose if you decide to sell that property. And then the last thing I would say, the drawback to selling, is just the emotional attachment, the sentimental value of the property. It's hard to imagine if you've lived in a house for more than 5, 10, 20 years that you don't have some type of an attachment to that house. I know my wife and I have lived in the same house for 24 years now, and when we get ready to move, it's going to be tough because we've raised our kids in that house. And so that's it. Those are the pros and cons of renting versus selling. If you want to find out more information about how much your house can rent for, click the link below. You can fill out a form. We'll get you a rental range report. It'll tell you how much your house can rent for. It'll show you rental comps around your house. We would love to provide that for you. It's all free. So click the link below. Also, go ahead and like the video, share it if you want to, and subscribe to our channel. We're always creating more landlord and investor friendly videos to help them navigate through the world of rental real estate.